Hey guys, it's Lisa and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be making some cloth rosettes. They're very simple little roses that you can add to various projects, and we're going to put them on a couple little projects we'll do also. Now I'm starting with drop cloth here, and I'm just ripping some strips. You can rip them just whatever thickness that you want. This is maybe 1 inch thick. Depending on the size of the roses that you're going to be making. You might want to go a little thicker, but this is going to work for the size that I'm going to be making. Now you can use any kind of fabric, preferably a fabric that will rip, but this is just what I'm using here to show you how. And so I just start with the end, and I just kind of wad up the end. Now I've already cut some circles out of cardboard, and the circles don't have to be perfect at all, just around the size that you want your rose. So I just cut these out by hand and didn't even use a pattern. And I'm just gluing that little wadded up piece in the middle, and then I'm twisting and adding some glue just here and there. Now you'll twist in one direction for a little while, and then you'll flip it back and twist it the other direction. And that'll add some dimension to your rose. And as you make these, you'll get better and better at them, and you can kind of push your fabric up tighter to make them taller when you want them taller. These are just fun roses to play with, and they kind of have a shabby look, so they go well with the things that I make in my shop. But you can make these out of scraps of lace. I've even taken an old curtain, lace curtain, and just, obviously you can't rip that, but you can cut those in strips and make a little dressier one. Or I've taken just that lace from that, or just a little lace ribbon, and I've held it together along with a fabric and twisted the two of them together to make fuller roses. There's really not much limit to what you can make these out of, but I do like them made out of the drop cloth. And then I just glue that end down, and now I'm just trimming the excess off my cardboard. Because, like I said, I didn't use a pattern with this. I just kind of eyeballed it, and because roses are not perfect anyway. So I'll make a few of these so that if you can't see it well, you'll better understand how to make them before we'll start on the projects that we're going to be putting them on. Again, you just glue that little end in the middle, and just eyeball where the middle is, and just twist and wrap, adding just a dot of glue here and there. Twist one way and add a dot of glue. Then twist the other way. You're still taking that the ribbon in the same direction, or the fabric in the same direction, but you're just going to twist the other way. So you're just going to twist and wrap and put a dot of glue. Twist, wrap, put a dot of glue until you get your flower the size that you want them. And obviously these can be made really large or even smaller than these. And I think that you'll like making these roses. They're very, very simple, and they work on a number of projects. Obviously, a thicker fabric would make bulkier roses, so if you want that look instead, then maybe even try some Warm and Natural, which almost has the feel of felt, but it makes pretty roses also. But again, you have to cut that. You can't rip the Warm and Natural because it's almost like quilt batting, and obviously you can't rip that. But if you don't have any of this fabric on hand, and you don't generally keep extra fabric, If you go to throw away an old t-shirt, just tear it up in strips, and you could make it out of t-shirt. You can make it out of flannel. There's just not many fabrics that these couldn't be made from. And then here are a few of them completed. And now we're going to move on to the first project that we're going to put some of these on. I found this old, I guess it's a piano bench at a thrift store, and it's definitely seen better days. So I'm just going to give it a good sanding and clean it up good. Now I've already taken the seat out of the top. It was just a couple screws, and so I took that out so that I can recover it. I'm just giving it a good sanding and getting anything that's loose or anything that's raised smooth. And I'm going to be putting chalk paint on this. So I don't have to sand it really good. I just have to get anything that would take away from having a smooth finish. The top of this thing was a very dated fabric, so it's going to be easy to improve this stool. And the color that I've chosen for this is the moss green from Waverly. And I really like that color, and I really like to use it with a white wax. So, as you know, I love white wax, and yes, I will be using it on this item also. So once I get this cleaned up, I let it dry, and while I'm letting it dry, I go to work on that seat. And so the seat's going to be very simple because it's small and it isn't very thick. And so once I take the old fabric off, then all I have to do is cut my drop cloth, which is what I'm going to be covering this with, and just cut it to the size. And because this is so thin, I don't cut it much bigger than this board. And I was able to save the padding. It wasn't too bad, so I just I used the padding that was on it. And now I'm just cutting my fabric as close to that as I can and still have room to cover it. Now here I am putting this moss chalk paint on, and like I said, I give it just one coat, and it covers pretty well. And I'm not going to make you watch all that, but like I said, I just go over the entire piece with one good coat, and then just go back and do a little bit of touch up here and there, and then it covered well. Okay, so now I've covered the seat I'm covering the seat with drop cloth, and on that fabric, I'm just putting some stencil. And this is just one that I had that was kind of a French style stencil that would fit on that seat. So, sometimes that just happens. I just put what will actually fit. And this is just one that worked the best. So I like to do a couple of different colors on my stencils when I can, because I feel like it adds more character. And I'm just kind of pouncing that on with my sponge. And then I'll go back and do the other two lines in black. And these stencils are just a really quick way to add some character to a piece and make them different than you would see just in a store. And although some of them seem a little bit pricey, when you consider that you can use them and reuse them and reuse them, then they're actually pretty economical. I like some of the transfers that I've seen, the new transfers from IOD, but I just can't bring myself to pay that for something that I'm going to put on, and that's the only time I'm going to be able to use it. But I do think they're really pretty, but I'll just stick with my stencils. And I'm using that same color of green here that I used on the actual bench itself. Now, I did mention that with this bench, I did go back and put white wax on it because I like to tone down that green, and I love the look that the white wax gives that moss green. So I did go back once my paint dried well and go over it with a coat of white wax and then wipe that off well. And I'll show you on the next project. If you're not familiar with how to do the white wax, I'll show you on the next project how to do it. But there is the stencil, and I feel like on that drop cloth, these stencils look really good. Now all I have to do is just let that dry well, and then I'm going to cover that seat. And when I cover that seat, I make sure that my fabric is cut fairly close so that I have enough to wrap it well, but also it's not so much that it's going to be bulky at all. I like to keep that neat, even though you're not going to really see that. I like to keep that underneath just as neat as possible. Now on my ends here, just to keep the bulkiness down, I'm just cutting straight across that corner, but still leaving enough room to pull that up over the corner. But I just feel like that eliminates some bulkiness of that fabric there. And I always start with my corners and just pull those down tight, and then do my ends. And with this piece, because it's more of an inlay seat, I think this glue is going to hold it super good. I don't think there's any need to use staples here because, like I said, this glue is going to hold really well because we're using cloth and wood here, and both of these items are extremely porous. So that glue will hold super well, I think. And I'm just checking the back side to make sure that it's going to line up right, and then I just glue the whole thing down well, and then all I have to do is just put that back down in that bench and reattach those two screws, and my bench will be complete. So I feel like this piece was pretty easy and quick to redo, and I think that the difference is really good on that. And there's where I attached some of those roses. I just hot glued those to the corners, and I purposely stayed out of the center so that it wouldn't affect an area where you see it. So now I'm going to show you more about that wax on this piece. But first of all, I'm going to cover just that little cardboard insert that goes inside it. This particular one didn't have a glass in it. Sometimes I'll even cover the glass and do this technique, but I'm just taking that little cardboard that is inside, and I'm going to recover that again with the drop cloth. And I'm just cutting just as close as possible, but just giving myself just enough room to hot glue that to the back and keep it just as neat as I can, because we don't want too much bulkiness going in this frame. So any thin fabric will work just as long as you can't see through it. This is a solid color that I'm covering. This back would probably show through that fabric, but the other side has no print on it, so it'll work fine. But again, I'm starting with my corners and just hot gluing those corners, and then hot gluing around all the sides and keeping it good and snug, and then it'll be ready for my stencil. Now this one, I'm going to put my favorite scripture in, and it is be still and know that I am God. And so I found the stencil to go on this, but realized that part of the K there is going to stick out. So all I have to do is that K is just not going to be real dressy, and that's okay because it's got some dressiness there on the top. I'll just take that one little curve out of it, and I'm going to do that by taking a piece of tape and just kind of taping that straight across, so I'll have a finished edge on my K there. And then I'm just going to tape this in place everywhere, and I'm taping it more toward the bottom, just as close as I can get to the bottom. And the reason that I'm doing that is because this whole cardboard will show, or this whole area of the cardboard will show because of the way the frame's made. So I can set that all the way down on the bottom there and still leave myself some room to add a few of those little rosettes to the top of this, because I'm also going to be using those on this. And again, here I'm using this same moss color green, and then my other color here will be black, so that I can kind of display these together in the same vignette. Like I said, I love this scripture, but it is a hard one to remember to go by, because sometimes We don't want to be still. We just, as women especially, we want to fix everything ourselves. And here I am using that white wax. You just brush it on with a wax brush and then wipe it right off. Now this is more of a waxier white wax than that liquid that Waverly carries, but you just put that on and wipe it right off. And now I'm just putting that scripture right back in the frame, and it makes a beautiful piece of art. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope that I've inspired you to do some crafting or flipping. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Have a good evening.